Dharan, good evening.
Sir, shall we start, sir?
Why not?
Thank you.
Visibility correct. Idella correct irka?
Ella correct, sir.
Okay. Sir. Okay.
Principal ma'am.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening to one and all. It's an immense pleasure in welcome you all to the 7 days national level faculty development program on perspective on the regional history of Tamil Nadu from 1st July to 7th July. Organized by PG and Research Department of History, Pachaiyappa College, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Today happened to be first day on the topic Understanding the Nation through Regional Perspective. At the outset, I would like to welcome our principal in charge, Dr. R. Jayanti ma'am, who had given permission and had presided over this program. And special welcome and our resource person, Henry Colonel Professor N. Rajendran, formerly Vice-Chancellor, Alagappa University, Karaikudi, Tamil Nadu. It's a big privilege to inform to that he is student of our department and also had served as professor of the history department. His father, Professor N.K. Narayanan, also served as a professor, head of the department and principal of our Pachaiyappa College, Chennai. In the very same history department, which is a big pride of ours, and welcome R. Siva, Assistant Professor, PG and Research Department of History, Pachaiyappa College, Chennai, who deliver his vote of thanks. And more especially, the respected professors, research scholars, students, friends, and my dear colleagues, for having participating in the 7 days national level faculty development program. Our technical team, Dr. P. Kumaran, Mr. Vetrivendan, Mr. K. Kavya Chelvan, and Mr. B. Gandhi Lenin, Program Coordinator, America TV. Once again, welcome you all to participate in the above program. Due to poor network connection, principal could not join right now. We will proceed to the session. Now I request our Assistant Professor Dr. S. Sumati, PG and Research Department of History, give you an introduction about our resource person. Welcome, ma'am. Sumati, ma'am.
Yeah, great privilege and honor for me. Hello,
Yes, audible.
audible, no? Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a moment of great privilege and honor for me to extend a hearty welcome to all of you today at this day one of perspective on the regional history of Tamil Nadu. 7 days national level faculty development program held from 1/7/2021 to 7/7/2021. Today's topic is understanding the nation through regional perspective. It's my pleasure to welcome our principal in charge of Pachaiyappa College, Dr. R. Sri Jayanti, convener Dr. R. Saravanan, head of the Department of History, Pachaiyappa College, and all other organizers from our respective department. I extend my heartfelt welcome to all participants at the Zoom and at my dear and from all over.
Madam, voice not audible. Poor network connection.
Greetings and welcome our Professor Rajendran as Vice-Chancellor of Alagappa University, 18 to June 2021.
Madam. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, sir, Saravanan sir, madam வந்து இல்ல சார் உள்ள லைன்ல.
Audible?
Yes.
Hello, audible?
பேசுங்க மேடம்.
Audible?
வாய்ஸ்
Okay,
பிரேக். இப்ப கரெக்ட்டா இருக்கு. இப்ப பேசுங்க.
ஸ்டார்டிங்ல
ஸ்டார்டிங்ல இருந்து பேசுங்க. Hello.
Okay. Rajendran served as a 35 years of rich experience in teaching and research in the area of history. Pachaiyappa College, 2000 in Bharatidasan University, in 1989 to 2017. Professor Rajendran has provided able leadership and efficient administration as Vice-Chancellor of Alagappa University. Leadership quality, Professor Rajendran of higher education by achieving national and international ranking During his tenure as VC or itself in social extension activities, and at the same time creating benchmarks in the realm of higher education by achieving category 1 status, QS India ranking 24th, QS Asia ranking 199, NIRF 36, and best Swachh Award for 4th place among government institutions across the country as clean and green campus. Besides the quality of enhancement in teaching and research as expected under ROSA 2.0 scheme at the university has achieved the unimaginable high index of 86 in just 2 years with quality publications and high creation index. Foreign visits. He has visited many academic institutions abroad, such as Tianjin University and Tanshan Polytechnic, China, and Nanyang Technical University in Singapore, Open University, Malaysia, Binaria University, Malaysia, Jaffna University, Sri Lanka. Institutional builder. Early, he has been the founder, director of Bharadasan School of Management, 2016, Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Studies, 2007, at Bharadasan University. He also served as the director of Center for Distance Education, 2014, Dean of Faculty Arts, 2008, coordinator for ROSA scheme, 2014, in the same university, member of ICHR, Government of India, New Delhi. In his acclaimed academic career, Professor Rajendran has received many academic awards. He also honored with the prestigious membership 2008 to 2015 in the Indian Council of Historical Research, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. Then one more thing I want to add, he was one among the 18 historians all over India. UGC Review Committee member. He has also been a member of UGC Review Committee for Center for Advanced Studies, CAS, of University of Calcutta. And Jawaharlal Nehru University, General Secretary TNHC and SIH, Nadu History Congress, for General Secretary of the South Indian History Congress, 2015 to 2017. He is also only academician to hold the prestigious position of General Secretary of 2 premier history associations simultaneously. Then research guide. He has produced 20 PhDs and guided more than 100 MPhil scholars and published 65 research peer-reviewed journals of reputation, including EPW and Sage Publications journals. He has also contributed academic articles, The Hindu, Indian Express, and Frontlines publications. As an eminent historian and a profile writer, Professor Rajendran has published and edited 12 books, National Movement in Tamil Nadu, Educational Politics and State Co-edition in 1905 to 1914, Oxford University Press, 1994, is a unique research book and a magnum opus of all his writings, in which he has challenged the very thesis and ideas of the Cambridge historians. He has been honored with the many meritorious achievements by Cambridge University. Besides, he has received the Best Tamil Book Award and honored with the title of Sindhanai Peruli. in his book Tamil, Desiyam, Nattil Desiyam, and Swadesiyam in 2003. He served as the coordinator of Dictionary of Martyrs, India's freedom struggle, Southern region, and ICHR project. Then as a research person, Professor Rajendran sir has delivered 170 lectures as resource person and invited speaker for academic programs, including UGC refresher orientation courses, training programs, and endowment lectures. Has presented 162 research papers in various national and international seminars, workshops, symposiums, and conferences. Conferences and seminars organized. He has successfully organized 10 UGC refresh courses and more than 65 national and international level conferences and seminars sponsored by UGC, ICHR, TANCI. Then member of academic bodies. As a member of the research board, Professor Rajendran he has been instrumental in shaping and the curriculum of a number of universities like Bharatdasan University, Periyar University, Tiruvallur University, and Tamil Nadu Open University. He also served as a member of the Board of Studies in various colleges and universities across India and a member of IQAC at Bharatdasan University. Then conferment of honorary colonial rank. The honorary rank was conferred on the Vice-Chancellor in recognition of his service in the field of academics, research, and higher education, and promoting NCC in the affiliated colleges, being a NCC cadet in his school days. Professor N. Rajendran was the only VC to be conferred this rank in 2018 in Tamil Nadu. NAC peer team chairman, Professor N. Rajendran sir, has been visited number of institutions as chairman of the NAC peer team for NAC assessment and accreditation. With his academic credibility and leadership quality, Dr. Rajendran has provided clean and transparent administration in every position he has occupied so far, which has been highly appreciated by the academia. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation, Rajendran sir. Now I request you to take over the session.
Thank you very much, ma'am, to give a beautiful introduction of our resource person. Now I request Henry Colonel Professor N. Rajendran, formerly Vice-Chancellor Alagappa University, Karaikudi, Tamil Nadu, to deliver his session on understanding the nation through regional perspective. Now the floor is yours. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saravanan. Good evening to everybody. And Dr. Saravanan, the head of the department of my alma mater, Pachaiyappa College, Department of History. The principal, I hope the principal has joined, and also Dr. Sumati, who has introduced me by an elaborate, description, and also all the professors, research scholars, students who have joined the link for today's program. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Saravanan for inviting me to join this program for the simple reason that I am basically a teacher, number one. And also I am a student of history. So only when one is a student of history or student, he'll continue to learn. And the moment, if I call myself as professor, sometimes my learning comes to a halt or stop. So I continue to be a student of history. So Dr. Saravanan has given me an opportunity to once again practice the art of history so to say. And more importantly, this particular human resource development program is being organized by the Department of History, Pachaiyappa College. I must really congratulate Dr. Saravanan and his team for organizing it and also choosing a very important topic, perspectives of the regional history of Tamil Nadu. And I think this is a very important topic right at this moment. And the program, I assume that it goes on for 7 days. And the topic of today is, I have chosen understanding the nation through regional perspectives. So I would like to share with you some of the PPT, though I may go on talking because that is the way in which the art of history or teaching of history has been practiced for during my days. But I think the art of history also has changed in the recent times. Now we have moved as far as education is concerned from education 1.0 to 2.0 and 3.0. And now we have just moved from education 4.0 to 5.0. Especially during this pandemic period, I think the understanding of learning and teaching, the art of learning and teaching has been so long in person and before the blackboard and before the students. But after the pandemic, that is March 2020, we have been having remote connections. We have been logged on as we are experiencing right at this moment, the online learning platform as well as online teaching platform. So one should not be left behind as far as the learning process goes. As I already told you, that the idea of learning is today lifelong learning. Lifelong learning used to be a department previously, but now it is not a department as it is, so as to say. Lifelong learning is a concept, which means whatever profession to which you belong, even after graduation or for whatever may be your degree, when you get out of the portals of your institution and then join a profession, but you continue to learn throughout your life. That is what the present scenario requires. And that is the reason why the concept lifelong learning has been introduced and it is being practiced also throughout the world. So I am also a practitioner of lifelong learning, and hence I thought I should also practice the art of teaching and learning with the ICTE tools, so as to say, because our teachers in Pachaiyappa College, they never brought any ICT tools to the classroom. The 1 hour we used to have lecture, they will come only with 2 chalk pieces and they will hold the entire class in rapt attention for 1 hour and so, and sometimes more also. So without any break. That has been the art of teaching so long, but now the art of teaching has moved in a different direction. Even Dr. Sumati has, in my introduction, while introducing me, has said that I have visited NTU, Nanyang Technology University, Singapore, where the art of teaching, we had a personal experience, which is quite different from the way in which we used to teach in our own classrooms. Even the classroom experience is something different. So with this prelude, I would like to just start by saying that the topic today is, the general topic of course is the regional history of Tamil Nadu. or perspectives of region history of Tamil Nadu. But I have taken the concepts of region and nation. The moment you use the word region, so naturally you use this word region in diametrically opposite or just opposite to the idea of nation. Otherwise, we need not use the word region, because when you take a human body in a holistic perspective, you don't say any part of your body as something as a region. It is whether if it is a little finger or the nails in your body or the hairs in your body, each and everything belongs to you. It is part of the body, which means it is part of the whole. So it cannot be different. Naturally, when we use the term nation, which goes into saying that all parts of the nation are one and the same. That is really the idea of a nation. But when we use the term region, and then I think it is a historiographical construct. Why say it is a historiographical construct? Is that India has been a civilization, not a nation to start with. Because if you use the term nation in India, it is a European construct. Eurocentric knowledge has introduced the concept of nation in India to start with, because the idea of pan-India was there a long time in India, but India was referred as a civilization, not as a nation to start with, because when we attained independence, for instance, in 1947, independence was given to 11 British provinces, if you remember correctly, if I remember correctly. And then there were European enclaves like Portuguese territory, Goa government, and then the French territory of Pondicherry, Chandernagore, Yanam, and Karaikudi. And of course, there were other 566 princely states. So independence was given only to 11 British provinces. Beyond these 11 British provinces were also certain territories which were lying outside the purview of freedom, which means they have an option to join the nation at that time. And you can, that was in 1947, mind you, that was in 1947, it was the 20th century. And when we talk about India, right from the beginning, then the concept of nation has been introduced in India by the European, say, epistemology and historiography. And India has been seen as a nation, as a whole. Because even Arnold Toynbee, the renowned British historian, in his study of history, who really studied 26 civilizations that flourished in this earth. And then, and after a serious study of these civilizations, which were born and developed and also disintegrated, he had come to the conclusion that only two civilizations are living civilizations. One is the Indian civilization, and the other is, of course, the Chinese civilization. So, as far as the European terminology, when we are addressing India as a nation, naturally, the problem of identification of other parts as region come into play. But this is my thought on the idea of region and nation. But at the same time, what is very important to us at this moment is whether the sense of history prevailed in the Occident, that is in Europe, as well as in Orient. This is the question. If you say Occident or Europe, the European historiography clearly establishes the presence of the sense of history. Because when we study history, we say we teach the youngsters in the classroom, even at the graduate level, that the father of history is none other than, say, Herodotus, the Greek historian, 5th century BC. But this is again, you have the origin, the evolution, and different forms and perspectives of history in the European history, tracing the growth of history right from the beginning of Herodotus down to modern times. And there were many scholars who have worked on this. I have just indicated the modern scholars, two of them. One is George G. Eggers, and of course, he was a German settled in US, who has been writing on history of historiography, European, say, authors. Similarly, G.P. Gooch, a British historian, who has also worked on the historiography of European, say, scholars. So the point is that the European historiography traces the entire development of history with a linear mode, with a linear progress, right from the beginning to modern times. And we also see different theories and different schools of history also developing during this time. For instance, you have now, even if you take national movement, for instance, you have different theories. You say the nationalist perspective, or the say colonial historiography, and also the subaltern historiography, the Cambridge historiography, the Marxist historians. So the list goes on. Similarly, in Europe also, till Enlightenment, you had kind of a say cyclic historiography, and also you have romantic history, and which came to the modern times. And then suddenly, I think different types of theories developed with the Annales School in France, and also the incoming of theories in postmodernism, modernism, and postmodernism, which had introduced the latest subaltern historiography also. So the idea is that the Occident has a very clear-cut perspective through their historiography, established that a sense of history prevailed in Europe, and that is being preserved in the European, say, historiography, as well as in their own writings. On the other hand, when we come to Orient, like India and China, for example, the Orient doesn't mean India and China. We have Japan and other countries. But yet, I'm just taking, for instance, India and China alone. So when we say Orient, and there they had perhaps a longer history than the European nations. Of course, when you say Europe, we always remember the legacy of Rome and legacy of Greece, and even today that we remember. But I think even prior to the legacy of Rome and legacy of Greece, you have countries like say India and China possessing a long history, tradition, and also the tradition of documenting their own history. That is also there. For instance, if you take China, you have a Chinese emperor, the first Chinese emperor, who has been called as Xian Ti of the Qin dynasty, who started constructing the Great Wall of China. And Xian Ti, in fact, is remembered not only for building the Great Wall of China, but more importantly, he is remembered for, say, giving an ordinance, or this particular ordinance says that, say, burn away all the history books in the public libraries in China. That was in 3rd century BC. I'm talking about 3rd century BC. In 3rd century BC, imagine the public libraries in China possessed history books, and these books were ordered to be burned down by Xianti, which means the art of writing had already started in China. But unfortunately, we do not know who was the father of Chinese history, because we always go by the European, say, epistemology. That is number one. Similarly, in India also, in India, we had a Puranic tradition. So the 18 Puranas are nothing but, maybe there are exaggerations. We have to take with a pinch of salt. But in Indian tradition, they had the tradition of documenting. That is very important. Both orally as well as we have inscriptions, and also literature. Through literature, it is being documented. Now, I would like to just refer a point here. If you trace the across the world, the historians of the world, unfortunately in India, the historian starts only with Kalhana, because it has been documented by the world community, which means, I mean, the peers of history, where they identify the Indian history or Indian historiography starts with Kalhana of who wrote Rajendran. Of course, the entire Rajendran is in West form, that is not a prose form. It is about the history of Kashmir. And one of the important points of Kalhana's Rajendran is he mentions the number of books that he had referred to write this magnum opus, or what we call the Rajendran. He mentions 18 books. In other words, in modern researchers, they use the term review of literature. So when we use the review of literature, you try to say, identify your topic with similar or nearby topics on which have been produced in the form of books or articles, and you say, and then you vindicate your topic why it is different from other say so far produced literature. So here Kalhana is doing the same thing. Kalhana is trying to identify his work, saying how he is indebted to number of books that he had already consulted for writing this particular work. There, only Nilamata Purana is we are able to lay our hands. It survived, whereas all other things have disappeared. So the sense of history, you must say, prevailed in India. The art of writing was also there. But unfortunately, we cannot see the Indian historical writing through say, Oriental European historiographical tradition. This is a kind of a historical anachronism. When we say historical anachronism, it is a conflict, a conflicting situation. And that is because we try to borrow the principles and ideas of the West, and then we try to evaluate our own writings, our own perspectives in the light of the historiographical principles laid down in the West. So this cannot be done, because it has to be Indian historical writings must be seen in situ in the sense in their own perspective, in their own cultural milieu. Then only I think we'll be able to understand. And unfortunately, what is missing, of course, in Indian historical say sense of history, definitely Indians had a sense of history. There is no doubt about it. But what is missing is that kind of a historiographical construct right from the beginning of history down to modern times. Because after all, Indian history has been written by a number of, to start with a number of scholars, European scholars. Vincent Arthur Smith was the earliest person to write, what should I say, a connected history of India from ancient times to modern times. The Oxford History of India, we all know, he was the first person to attempt to write the ancient, medieval, and modern history of India. So that tradition, of course, unfortunately, is missing in the Indian context. But however, what we should not forget is that we know that the art of writing is being practiced in India right from the beginning. Now, I already told you the Indian historical tradition is mostly European construct to start with. The history of the region submerged in the nation. In other words, the regional history has become part and parcel of the nation. Because when we read any Indian history, the Indian history starts with Indus Valley civilization, which I will be referring in the that is the crux of today's lecture, in fact. Because I'm going to trace the antiquity of India, the antiquity of Tamil Nadu. So placing both of them side by side. Before we move to that, the idea is that Indian history, when we read, the history of the regions are submerged in the overall tradition of the nation. In other words, it introduced in the modern, the postmodernist parlance, the concepts of nation and region. These two, they are identified as binary opposites. Whereas when you say the nation is at the center of the discourse, any discourse on the, say, Indian history, nation is at the center, whereas the region is always in the margin. So these are the binary opposites. If you use the methodology as pronounced by Jacques Derrida, Derrida's deconstruction, when he identified the binary opposites of margin and the center, and also to use Derrida's deconstruction process, the unmasking the center, that is nation in our perspective, accommodating the margin, and that is the region. Alongside the center is what we call the unmasking the center. In other words, in the tradition of writing Indian history, there must be place for everything. When we call the binary opposite of region, should not be held at the periphery, but also you should be at the sharing the equal space with the center. That is the idea of nation and region as far as the historiographical construct is concerned. And the process of deconstruction. The process of deconstruction is the methodology that I'll be following. I'm going to give two examples. One is from the ancient history, of course. The other is from modern history. Time and space are eternal in history. There's no doubt about it. Because we are always given to understand that without time, history loses its meaning. And similarly, without geography or space, once again, history loses its meaning. This is also true. There's no doubt about it. And that is the reason why whenever when you say 1789, then immediately you identify with French Revolution. You don't say 1789 with other countries. Immediately you say, when you say 1857, you say the Indian Great Revolt. And similarly, 1776, you say the American War of Independence. 1917, you say the Russian Revolution. So the time, the chronology, as well as the space, the geography are tied together in history. However, for the process of deconstruction, my lecture is more discursive in a discourse, a kind of a discursive discourse, where I'll be moving across this time from ancient to modern time, though the time at our limit is very limited, I believe. But yet, this is the process by which I will be talking to you, because I would like to drive home a particular point of view. I would like to deconstruct the idea of nation and the region. That is my idea. So in this process, I would like to take examples of both ancient history of Tamil Nadu as well as ancient history of India, and similarly the modern history of India as well as the modern history of Tamil Nadu. And of course, this is not done in linear mode. That will not have any connectivity in the entire process. And I would like to just draw the attention of the learned audience with me. The number of people have already attempted the regional history of Tamil Nadu. You have, only I have mentioned few of them, there are many. For example, the history of Kongu country by Dr. Aragyasamy is one of the best books that you can come across. Earlier, no such work has been written. I think this book has not been surpassed by any other person. Even before we thought about the regional history, it was Professor Aragyasamy who has, there is a spelling mistake, kindly bear with me. It was Professor Aragyasamy who has written a kind of a pioneering work covering the entire Kongu history. Similarly, the role of feudatories in Pallava history, written by Professor M.S. Govindasamy of Annamalai University. And of course, Professor Aragyasamy was earlier. I would like to remind Professor Saravanan and others, he was a lecturer in Pachaiyappa College before he moved to Madras University. So I would like to just remind Professor Saravanan and others. And again, the role of feudatories in later Chola history by Professor M.S. Govindasamy. And these are examples of how regional history has been attempted by earlier scholars, and also the pioneering work identifying the antiquity of Tamils. A history of the Tamils from the earliest times to 600 AD by P.T. Srinivasa Iyengar is one such magnum opus. I think this book is very rarely found today. And of course, there are adjoining regions like Kerala where the Sahitya Academy has uploaded the entire book. You can go to the website and download this book. I think it is available. And situating antiquity of Tamilagam as regional history. This is the idea. So situating the antiquity of Tamilagam and also drawing parallel with the antiquity of the Indian history, for example, Indus Valley civilization. So why history is important? That is what is the most important question to be asked. Why we are all concerned about due place must be given to regional history. And one thing is the present is not self-explanatory in any form. Present is not self-explanatory in any form, which means that you cannot understand the present by itself. And you need some kind of, say, historical backdrop to understand anything that is before you. For example, in the book called Mansion of History by Carl G. Gustafson, who has also written the book Preface to History. In this book, Mansion of History, Carl G. Gustafson gives a scenario, because I'm just trying to present you how present is not self-explanatory. He says, see, all of us say past, the grip of past, the dead past is not used to society. Why we are concerned about the past? Why should we give importance to the past? We will forget the whole past. We will start anew with fresh slate. That's correct. That is how mostly we try to console ourselves whenever we face some trying circumstances. But the question is whether we can really throw away this past, which is embedded in our history, which is embedded in society, and it is embedded in all forms of social life. More importantly, it has become part and parcel of the individual. So that is most important. It has become part and parcel of the individual. So Carl G. Gustafson gives you a scenario. In a scenario building, he says, all of us go to sleep. The dead of the night, as the hard disk of a computer is formatted, the hard disk of the human mind is the brain. So that is formatted across the globe. So everybody loses their memory, that is past. The next day when they wake up, they do not have even the singlest idea of the past, data of the past in the innermost recesses of their brain. So when you wake up next day, what will be your reaction? When you ask this question to in a classroom, perhaps some of the students may say, I may say, where am I? Who am I? These are the questions I may ask. Who are you? If you have somebody near you. And the most important thing is whether you be able to ask these questions, because asking is language. Language itself is past. You mastered the language by right from your birth to the present. So when you take away the past, you also lose your language. So you do not have anything in your mind. So you do not know what language to speak at all. That is the situation. So which means you cannot understand anything around you. And that is why history is important. Because society does not have an organic memory of its own. And only the memory of the society is always preserved in the pages of history. That is the reason why we always document. That is the reason why history is important. And otherwise, I think we may lose track of ourselves. That is what is very important. And how do we find the antiquity of a nation? Because when we take India as a whole, Tamil Nadu as opposite to, I think most important sources of archaeology and literature. And of course, you have excavations, explorations, and marine archaeology playing very great role. When we say exploration is nothing but when we take example of Ashokan inscriptions. Initially, there were 14 rock edicts, 7 pillar edicts, and 2 cave inscriptions. Most of them were hiding in the bushes. They were in the wilderness. And these inscriptions were mostly found by the army officers in the East India Company, mostly European in nature. They brought them to the museums. That is how the Alagappa pillar inscription, famous Alagappa pillar inscription, where you have the inscription of both Ashoka as well as Chandragupta, Samudragupta is also found, the same Alagappa pillar inscription. And similarly, here the European contribution is. I was talking to you about the perception of history, how we have drawn Indian history, how we have understood Indian history. And that is because we have followed the European epistemology in trying to understand Indian history. There is no doubt about it. But at the same time, what is the contribution of Europeans to Indian history? I must say it is immense. They have really worked hard. There are legendary names. For instance, you have Robert Bruce Foote, Colonel Meadows Taylor, you have Sir Mortimer Wheeler, Alexander Cunningham, John Marshall, and Father Eras, to mention a few. And of course, you have Robert Bruce Foote, his photograph is there. He is known as the father of Indian prehistory. Because he found or he discovered at Pallavaram the Bruce on par with the African prehistoric culture, a Paleolithic tool that is also found on the screen. And you also have the marine archaeology. Marine archaeology, because India has a long coast, there's a long coast. And the Archaeology Survey of India in 2001 has started a wing called Underwater Archaeology. And the National Institute of Oceanography, Goa, is also assisting ASI in underwater archaeology. And in 1990, S.R. Rao, named as the father of marine archaeology in India, who supervised the Dwaraka expedition. And he worked only with 5 diving archaeologists, because most of the professors, most of the archaeologists, they may not know the art of diving. They are not trained divers. I think in Tamil Nadu, I know only 2 people, of course, as professors of history. One is Professor Rajan, who was professor of history, who is perhaps still continuing at Pondicherry University. Earlier, he was in Tanjavur. He is a diver. He can dive. Similarly, Professor Adiyaman, late Professor Adiyaman, who worked in Tanjavur, Tamil University. These were the only 2 underwater archaeology. There are others, of course, in say National Institute of Oceanography. There are few, because the resources are very. Of course, you have a number of places where this diving has been done. Pumbukhar, Mahabalipuram, and of course, Dwaraka is in Gujarat. And they are being helped by literature. You have a pioneering work of R.K. Mukherjee, Indian Shipping, a history of seaborne trade and maritime activities of the Indians from the earliest times. This gives a kind of a source for the underwater archaeologists to find their, say, shipwrecks and other things. They are on the coast of India. This is the seabed view of Kaveri Pumpattinam. And this is archaeological excavation of Mahabalipuram, divers examining. And of course, you have Alexander Cunningham, first Director General of Archaeology, discovered number of ancient mounds in North India on the basis of epics, and recovered first seal from Harappa. That was around 1850s. Yeah, he recovered this seal. Of course, Sir John Marshall, and he excavated Harappa in 1922 and declared as pre-Aryan culture. And in fact, Professor Satyanath Iyer, who wrote the first volume of Indian history and culture, he made an emphatic statement that Indus Valley civilization is non-Aryan, pre-Aryan, superior to Indo-Aryan. I think this statement gives a pragmatic statement made by Professor Satyanath Iyer. And this is the Adichanal, where you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, you have a mound and the banks of the river Tamilbarani. And this is near Korkai port of the Pandya's. Here, Alexander Ray of the Archaeological Survey of India, ASI, conducted excavation at Adichanallu in Tirunelveli district between 1889 and 1905. And later on, we have P. Satyamurthy, 2004. He participated in the excavation of Adichanallu. And there is also Raja Reddy, the person with the tie. And Professor Raja Reddy is not an archaeologist, but he is a doctor from Apollo Hospital, Hyderabad. I know I want to say why. And they found a number of say excavated items, and this is the human skulls found at Adichanallu, discovered by Ray. That was Alexander Ray. And the most interesting part is, and there is an arrow mark of the first skull, where just above the eyebrow, you have a precise fold. And this fold has been identified by Raja Reddy of the Apollo Hospital, who after examining the skull, he came to the conclusion that this Adichanallu skull proves that they performed a surgery, first surgery perhaps, to cure brain tumor. That is very interesting. That is the inference drawn by Dr. Raja Reddy after examining the skull. Of course, we have in the Indian perspective, you have Shushruta and Charaka Samhita. You have a number of instruments being identified. Nearly 113 instruments have been listed for surgery. And this is again Kodumanal, the Sangam age site, first excavated by Dr. Subbarayalu of Tamil University in 1984. And now we are coming to the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is how how we identified the antiquity of Sangamage and the Tamil antiquity also. Here, in the Indian history, there is an epistemological barrier. When you say epistemological barrier, we see only the history of India from the north. The visibility of Tamil rulers and Tamil culture across India is not found. I already told you, they are the binary opposites. They are the binary opposites. So the place of Tamil, say, history is not given the center stage, or it is not sharing the center space along with the other histories of the north. But the evidence that is before us speaks something else. For instance, the visibility of Sangamage across India is very important, because why I say this is Ashokan inscriptions. There are 14 rock edicts, I say. I am just informing you or drawing your attention to one particular inscription by name Shabasgiri inscription, that is 13th rock edict of Ashoka, which is now in Pakistan, where it's a very important inscription. It says that Ashoka himself says he came to, he went to war with Kalinga after he ascended the 8 years after he ascended the throne. Number 2, after a war with Kalinga, the Berigosha has become Dharma Gosha, which means the reverberation of war drums became Dharma Gosha. This is what exactly the inscription talks about of the Kalinga war. But what is very important is there Ashoka mentions the foremost tip of South India, the Chera Chola Pandyas. That's very important. The rulers of Chera Chola Pandyas are mentioned in Ashoka inscriptions. We are talking about nearly 3rd century BC or 4th century BC. You just think of it. In those times, we do not have any, say, social media, print media, or visual media, or print media. No, so there's nothing for communication. Yet, the ruler of Pachaiyappa, while inscribing an inscription which is situated on the northwest of India, and there he mentions the names of 3 rulers. Why? That is the most important thing. Which means the visibility of the Tamil rulers to the northern rulers are so impending. That is the most important thing. They cannot simply ignore, as they did not marginalize. That is what I am trying to tell you. So they did not marginalize the rulers of Tamils, Tamil Nadu, in 4th century BC or 3rd century BC, as you find in the history books today. But at the same time, you also have Athigumfa inscription. Athigumfa inscription, the date has been very precisely drawn as 1st century AD, or just the 1st century BCE. That is what we call normally BC. And there, the inscription clearly says the Chera Chola Pandyas are 118 years old, which again is say a great revealer of the truth that the ruler from the eastern part of India, he says the antiquity and the time of the rulers of Chera Chola Pandya. He identifies the 3 rulers were 118 years old, which means they have already established kingdoms and they were ruling very effectively, and their presence is felt. That is, felt must be underlined. Their presence is felt by the ruler, a very important ruler, the eastern side of northeastern side of India. Again, Arthashastra, and where Kautilya clearly says that when during his time, he draws a comparison between his time as well as his grandfather's time. He says the travelers during his grandfather's time, they were complaining when they went to Dakshinapatha, that is south always mentioned as Dakshinapatha, and the way is infested with robbers. They could not trade very easily. The traders could not go to Dakshinapatha very easily and come back to Patliputra. Whereas he says during my time, the traders never made any complaint. They were very carrying on their trade very smoothly with the Dakshinapatha. So the idea that I am just putting before you is the visibility of the Sangam kings to the northern contemporaries. That is what is very important. They were so visible that the northern kings cannot, even Kautilya did not say ignore them. So their visibility was so powerful. That is what is we must identify. It means they were occupying enough space in the contemporary historiography of those times. But at the same time, we would like to know what is this truth from our own side, which means Sangam literature. Whether Sangam literature is aware of such things as northern rulers have identified the Chera Chola Pandyas, the Tamil rulers. Yes, you can say that Agananoru poem, 69, 281, 375. They talk about Mauryan Empire. Similarly, 251 and 265, they talk about Nandas. Especially, I make a reference to 251 and 265, where a young married lady, she was talking to, in the poem, she was talking to her friend, and she was complaining. She was complaining to her friend, my husband has gone to the north, to Patliputra on business, but he promised me that he would come back by last week. So far, he has not come back. What has kept him away from me? Is it the gold of the Nandas immersed in the Ganges? So this is again is a very poignant, say, reference made in the, it is coming from the mouth of an ordinary Tamil lady, which means, again, you must understand, we do not have any communication links as we do have. I can talk from my home and reach across the world, but those days it is not so. But yet the lady knows, of course the author knows, that there was this powerful Nanda Empire, which was very prosperous. They had a standing army at that time. So their richness is alluded to the gold that was immersed in Ganges. So again, it is a two-way process. That's the most important thing. They never identified as the binary opposites. That is what I'm trying to tell you. The contemporary Sangam society was identified by the rulers of the north, and similarly, the contemporary Tamil society identified the rulers of the north, which means there is no question of binary opposite. It is both of them share the same space. That's what we must identify. And again, Sangam literature, high watermark, the evolution of language to be traced to much earlier period. Because when we identify the Sangam rulers, we always depend on Sangam literature, whether it is Patinappalai or Madurai Kanchi, whatever it is. But you must also understand the Sangam literature has reached a high watermark by that time. It is not evolving. It was already reached a high watermark. So it must have had a much earlier time, much longer period for evolution into that high watermark to reach the zenith. So you can really imagine the antiquity of Tamil language itself. So I'm coming to the crux of the matter now. The Keezhadi, which is identified just here you have the blue shirt, you have the Amarnath of ASI, who was the first excavator of Keezhadi, first 3 phases of excavation. And these are the excavated sites. And it is nearly Sivagangai, it is in Sivagangai district. I always, as a Vice-Chancellor of Pachaiyappa University, I always prided myself saying that is I am in the district of Sivagangai because Karaikudi is part of Sivagangai district. So where the Tamil antiquity has been identified. But the proximity from Madurai is only 13 kilometers. Nearly the ASI during the time 2013 and 14 carried out 293 explorations in the Vaigai Valley. And 7 phases of explorations were done. First 3 were done by Dr. Amarnath of ASI. And now the State Department of Archaeology done an excellent work of pursuing it to the 7th stage. They have done excellent work so far. But I asked Amarnath a very important question. I asked because that Amarnath had visited Alagappa University twice, and I asked him, how is it that you were able to log on to Keezhadi? Because it was there all along, but yet how did you have this break of nearly 110 acres of land being identified as along the river Vaigai as a source of the ancient Tamil culture? He said Vaigai was the region which was not explored as other parts of the because in Tamil Nadu nearly 175 excavations were carried out so far. I also mentioned few of them. But Vaigai is a potential region because, though I have been saying that the Europeans wrote Indian history from their own perspective, it was Vincent Smith who says the history of India must begin from the Vaigai. It's very interesting. I think later on he went to Oxford after ICS, retired from ICS position, and then he went to London, and then he was lecturing in Oxford. So the idea is that Vaigai is a potential region of Tamil culture, and they identified rightly the Keezhadi region. Now, the salient feature of this particular site is what? Like Adichinallur and most of the places, the excavations are done at the burial sites. And that is the reason why the archaeologists are known as grave diggers, normally. They are called grave diggers. But Keezhadi is an exception. That is because we have both the habitation site as well as we have the burial site. Both are integrated in this particular excavation. That's very interesting aspect of it. So the salient feature of this excavation, of course, is 2018. The carbon dating proved that the civilization belongs to 600 BCE. Normally we say BC. So from today, it is 2,600 years ago. And 20,000 artifacts are found so far. It is only the tip of the iceberg. I want you to remember this. It's only tip of the iceberg. I think if the excavation continues and very purposefully in a planned manner, I think we may be in for a larger articles to the extent of the Indus Valley and Harappa civilization. And again, most important thing is that Keezhadi indicates the flourishing ancient urban civilization. Because you must understand one thing. Only after Indus Valley civilization is identified as an urban civilization. And then, of course, the succeeding civilizations were not identified as urban civilization. It took some time to come to the level of establishing the state and urbanization of the Gangetic plain or Gangetic valley. But here again, the Keezhadi region is one place where you have urban civilization prevailing as equivalent to that of the Indus Valley civilization. The whole of Indian history you will find at the contemporary times. I wouldn't say contemporary times, but maybe there is a time lag in this. But yet, the ancient time, in the 6th century BC, you have an urban civilization flourishing side by side the North Indian, say, civilization, which is very unique. That is what is very important. You have all the features of an urban civilization. And we go to the most important aspect is the Tamil script. Because so long, there is always a speculation about the Tamil script. Because here in Keezhadi, we have excavated, we have found both the graffiti marks. Graffiti marks are just like the seals of Indus Valley civilization, where pictographic in nature. And also you have script, the proper script. This is a Brahmi script only. And it is called Tamili now. It is called Tamil now. And the most important aspect of this discovery is, as historians, we know the first inscription that we have in India, what we call, we move from prehistory to historic period during the Mauryas, particularly the Ashokan times, with the inscriptions of Ashoka. The script on Ashokan inscriptions are highly developed Brahmi script, highly developed Brahmi script. Whereas, but we do not know how this evolution had taken place. We don't have any key for that. In other words, evidence. When we say key, it is evidence. But what we have at Keezhadi is something different. It is in the kind of a beginning stage of a script, of the Brahmi script. So there is an evolutionary nature of the script. In other words, I may say that Keezhadi may provide a key to understand even the Ashokan inscriptions. That is what is very interesting, the whole thing. For example, this is a graffiti mark. You can see the symbol of a fish there, and also this is the script itself, the name of a person. Again, this is also a script, and this is also a script. And the most important aspect of, I've just shown you the black and red pottery. I just shown you the black and red pottery, which is a very characteristic feature of those times. Now I am going to just draw your attention to the examination done by 8 experts. All these people, some of them are scientists. For example, there were people from ASI. There is scholars from biosensors, biotechnology, and they have examined this black and red painted pottery, and the discovery is reported in scientific journals called Nature Scientific Report, Volume 10, Article number 19786, 2020. And one of the authors, of course, belonged to Alagappa University, Kandasamy Thuraimurugan. And here, I would like to read the entire reporting in Nature. Raman spectroscopy, transmission electron microscopy, and X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy were used to understand the nature of the coating, that is the black coating. The analysis revealed the presence of single multi-walled carbon nanotubes and layered sheets in the coating. This is the lowest among the single-walled carbon nanotubes reported from artifacts so far, and close to the theoretically predicted value of 0.4 Enam. These nanomaterials were coated in the potteries that date back to 6th century BC and still retain its stability, still intact. An addition. The findings of nanomaterials in the prehistoric artifacts confirmed the existence of well-developed society in Keezhadi region. I think that is the reason why the Nature has reported this particular finding. I think this is one of the pioneering findings to say how well developed was the society. There are structural remains. You can see the bricks. These bricks are not the same bricks that we use. These are larger bricks, as we found in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. That's very important. And again, this is a drainage system used by terracotta. Again, you can have a large number of structures that we have. These are the structures, and we have evidence for weaving industry. The spindle that we can see, different types of spindles we have found, and this is an industrial site at Keezhadi, where you have cleaned with the brick structure, and these are the small pots maybe used to store the beads. These are tiles of a roof of a building, and this is a storehouse. This is a storehouse, and again you have jade and coralline beads. They were exported across the country, outside the country, particularly the Romans and the Greeks, particularly the Romans, came to India in search of such artifacts, and they took it from India. And again, amusements indicate their happy life, because there are a lot of spare time. This is the dice which comes in Mahabharata. Of course, you have the same dice also here being used by the ancient. This is a chess. This is one chess point. And this is again life of the people. And terracotta images also you can see in great number. So I am coming from, so the idea, first of all, the first description of what I have done is that I have drawn the regional history of Tamil Nadu with that of the national antiquity, nation's antiquity of Indus Valley civilization. Both are urban in nature. Both are urban in nature. And of course, but they don't share the same space in historiography. That is what is very important. So the very seminar, or what we call this particular program, is very important to give space to regional history, and also to accommodate regional history in the right place. This is as far as the ancient history is concerned. I may take another 15 minutes. Dr. Saravanan, do we have the time? I don't know whether Saravanan is there. Hello?
Sir?
Can I finish the lecture, or
Yes, sir.
can I just take another 15 minutes, or can I stop here?
Another 15 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'm moving from ancient period to modern period. The historiography of Indian nationalism. I'm not going into the details. I'm just trying to tell you one thing. The Indian nationalism is always seen from the, say, northern perspective. Because when you construct a nation, all parts of the nation and their contribution must be part and parcel of a nationhood. Otherwise, we may marginalize again the contributions of the people from the other regions. This is a very important thing. Again, the role of Tamil Nadu in the freedom movement. as well as the national movement is something unique. Unique in the sense you have the even from the middle of 18th century, you have the polygar revolts in the deep south. They formed South Indian Confederacy, the Marudu brothers in 1801, and they challenged the colonial government. At the same time, you also have the Vellore Mutiny as a precursor to 1857. But unfortunately, we have Professor Rajendran documenting the polygar revolt. Of course, Vellore Mutiny has been well documented by Professor Manikumar in his latest book. Of course, there are foreign scholars who worked on Vellore Mutiny also. But again, for example, 1857. 1857, we always think it is not part and parcel of Tamil. It took place only at Meerut and Delhi, maybe in some parts of Northern India. Most important thing is, I was invited by ICHR then to participate because they were celebrating the 150th year of 1857, whole of India. They said, what role did Tamil Nadu play in the 1857? They asked me to write a paper and make a presentation. Because in my book also, National Movement in Tamil Nadu, I have marginalized, I simply dismissed it with one paragraph, saying it was confined to North India, not to South India, particularly in Tamil Nadu. But when they asked, they said, why Tamil Nadu did not play a role? If you say that, you just answer us. Why Tamil Nadu did not play a role? You give us an answer. Then it made me to again go to the archives and see the volumes and military dispatches. And to my own surprise, I found, I have taken one thing as the yardstick. If Tamil Nadu did not experience 1857 or impact of 1857, then the British government should not have used certain measures. They should not have used prohibitive measures. I used it the barometer of assessing the intensity of 1857 in them. To my own surprise, I found, first of all, the newspapers were banned. They are banned from reporting 1857, particularly in the regional language, what we call the vernacular language. And secondly, many regions of districts of Tamil Nadu, the collectors were cautioned to look for army deserters and also people being instigated about 1857. One interesting thing is the data that I found that the Indian soldiers in the British Army, or those days we call Indian Army, the Madras Regiment, Bombay Regiment, and also the Calcutta Regiment. Nearly 1,200 Indian soldiers in the Madras Army were prosecuted, court-martial. The military language is called court-martial. They were court-martial. The most important question is, if Tamil Nadu experienced no ripples or they did not experience the impact of 1857, there was no sign of people, say, acknowledging the rising in the North, then why 1,200 soldiers were court-martialed for their, say, questioning their loyalty? That is number one. Number two, There were people in Salem, for instance. Salem, they were talking about the record says a place called Patnulkar Thiru. Maybe it's a weaving street, where people were saying soon the flag of the British will be brought down and the Indians, that is revolutionary soldiers, will be marching the streets of Tamil Nadu, and they will be hoisting the revolutionary flag. This is being reported to the government. And this is very unique. It is not happening in Madras city. It is happening in Salem. Similarly, such events happened in Bhavani, in Coimbatore region, and there were incidents in Chengalpet. So I think we require while trying to identify the place of Tamil Nadu in the national historiography, I think we must also rightfully identify the role of Tamil Nadu, and their sacrifices must be brought as far as the national freedom is concerned. Similarly, the Cambridge historians, like for example, you have Anil Seal and Baker. In fact, both of them have done extremely good work on Tamil Nadu. They followed what we call Namius methodology. He wrote The Structure of Politics in 1928. And here, David Washbrook, The Emergence of Provincial Politics in Madras Presidency. In that book, he says between the years 1896 and 1917, there was not even a single anti-British dog barking in the streets of Madras. I think against the British. This is again a very unacademic statement, but it was during this period we have the likes of Subramania Bharati, Subramania Siva, VOC, and others. And I think tomorrow's lecture perhaps will be illuminating on those aspects. I don't want, because of the paucity of time, I'm not going into the details. And at last, I would like to tell you, ICHR has carried out a project for which I was also coordinator for the South and for Tamil Nadu. So the title of the project is Martyrs Project, which means all those martyrs who laid down their lives for the cause of the nation in the freedom struggle on all forms of anti-colonial struggle. So, the Tamil Nadu government has brought out 3 volumes of Who is Who freedom fighters. And it was done by a good scholar, Dr. Vijayalakshmi has done it earlier. She's no more. And nearly 45 people out of 17,500 entries in the 3 volumes, we could find only 45 people as martyrs. And that cannot be brought out in one single volume. But the moment we went deeper into the issue, Tamils participated in the INA. There were a number of people. There were more than 50 people who died in INA itself. There were files in National Archives of India. And again, we have in other regions of Tamil Nadu, more than 250 people were identified. And the idea is that each individual name and their backdrop with the sources, it is intended. And I think the project has been completed and over to the ICHR. So I would like to end by saying that today, history, if you take history is not the domain of the historians alone. We should not compartmentalize ourselves. That's most important. We should not compartmentalize ourselves. And it is an era of cross-disciplinary research. And for instance, I have given here Vasant Shinde, a noted archaeologist of Deccan School, who was the Vice-Chancellor and also Chancellor later on. and Neeraj Roy, the biotechnologies. Both of them together, they analyzed once again the Harappan uh, artifacts and also the remains, and they have drawn some pioneering conclusions, which was also published in the King books of that. And again, Keezhadi researchers, they were from different disciplines. So this is not the domain of historians alone or archaeologists alone. In fact, we require a multidisciplinary approach to understand the contribution as well as the place of the region's history. That is because Mark Bloch, the Canal's founder, used to say, understanding is the basis of history. And if you want to, history is all about understanding. Understanding how these particular events have taken place, how the situation had come up. So we require certain understanding of this. So the history of the country must be written by its own people. That is more important. Entire workshop or 7-day program is intended to enthuse the youngsters particularly and make them involved very seriously into it. You have different skills are required. It's most important. History is not a lighter aspect or lighter subject, and if you may say so. It requires similar and much harder input to understand, to unearth the history of the region and its past. And if you take the history of USA, history of Germany, history of Rome, I think these are written by their own people. They are not written by scholars from outside. But as far as India is concerned, maybe the Orient generally, they have been writing about the histories of different regions. The European scholars. I'm not saying that they should not write. It's not that idea. But we must make our own contribution. I just want to say only one thing by ending. The great birth of the Indus Valley civilization has been identified in the older days, the smaller level, as a great birth like the modern swimming pool. That is the perception of the European school historiography. But D.D. Kosambi rightly identified that the great bath has something to do with the ritual bathing, because in Indian tradition, there is no concept of swimming pool or whatever like it is. But what we have is ritual bathing happening across the country. So this must have been one of the places where ritual bathing. So you must situate the history of the region, history of the place in their own cultural milieu, in the intrapsychic experience, as Hilti says. And I think that is what is required. I really thank Dr. Saravanan for giving me this opportunity to once again to take a look into history and practice my art of this course. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Very excellent and informative session, sir. Once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, floor is open to all. Any doubts or questions or clarifications can be put one by one in Zoom viewers. With regard to YouTube viewers, you can put your doubts or questions or clarifications in the chat box. Please ask. Sir, one question in YouTube.
Yeah.
Dr. J. Murugan, Assistant Professor, Dharmapuram Jnanambike Government Arts College.
Yes.
How can we identify the medieval India through the Chola rule in terms regional perspective?
Yeah, I think I'm not expert in the whole of India. Of course, I don't really get, of course, he's trying to identify the incursions of the Cholas into the uh, into northern part of India, as well as they established a vast empire, what we call the Mandalams in Tamil Nadu. Cholas were the later Cholas or the early Cholas were the one who established what is known as an empire, not only in India, outside India also, across the seas, Kadaram and other regions. So their presence is really, I must say, a very significant aspect of Tamil history and also the regional history. There is no doubt about it. But in my lecture, because it is well known, if you go and see the works of, there are a number of scholars who worked on it, particularly the magnum opus was written by Professor Nilendra Sastry. And later on, you have people like Sadasiva Pandaratta from Annamalai University. And much later, you have people like Professor Shanmugam, Professor Vice-Chancellor, and Nadu Karashima. These people were working on Chola history. So they established different aspects of Chola history, well documented. So what is not part and parcel of the, so it must find a place. I agree with you. The question is that since you have a very significant aspect of history in the medieval period, so why it is not being part of the center or central discourse? That is the point. Yes, I do agree.
Good evening, sir. Professor Rajendran, sir. Very insightful session, sir. I'm Dr. Shan. Sir, you must have heard about a lot of historical novels now coming up by very young authors. Like there is this person, Manu K. Pillai.
Yeah.
He has written a lot of novels on Mughal period about, and in a very historical and a very novelistic way. So what do you, which area would you suggest South Indian authors to bring out such historical novels, because most of them are all in North India? And recently I came across one person who wrote about some history of some horse and about the era of pandemics related with history.
Okay.
But that was all sticking on to northern part of India. In which area would you suggest researchers to take up and opportunities to write historical novels on which aspect of South Indian history, sir?
No, I think I don't know because we are always trained not to be what would I say, imaginative. Of course, imagination is part and parcel of historical construction, but it is not only the imagination that plays. So basically, historians are deconstructed in such a way. They are weaned away from writing, giving wings to their imagination. That is the first part of it. Right? Alvin Toffler said we must create sanctuaries of imagination. Imagination plays a very great role. Even APJ Abdul Kalam, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam says it. But a person like Kalki, he has written something very significant. Very significant. If at all I developed some interest in history, though I may not have had this interest earlier, but having read Punniyin Selvan, Parthiban Kanavu, and Sivagamam Sabadam, I think and that was very significant aspect and significant novels of Chola history and Pallava history written by Kalki. It needs imagination, first of all, and also some, of course, Sandilyan. Sandilyan has written so many historical novels. And one novel which you have not read perhaps is Aru Ramanathan's Veerapandiyan's Manai. Veerapandiyan Manavi is one of the best novels. You must read, you will cry at the end. That's the most important thing. It is such a wonderful novel that I have read. I think there are people who have written great novels about Tamil, say, kings and dynasties. It needs only imagination and then involvement. Of course, the same, today there are several reprints of Kalki's works are coming out, Ponniyin Selvan. I think it is not that only in North India it is being written and South India, particularly in South, much before the North India has experienced this kind of writing. I think the people here have already started experimenting it and also proved their mettle. Only thing is the creative writing is something. It comes to people, not necessarily you need to have a historical background. You need to have historic sense of history, that's all. And also the art of writing and creative writing. That is what is it. I think we can do it. It is not suggesting areas also.
Thank you, sir.
Because it is not what I suggest. You can, for example, there were films on the kind of punishments were given during national movement, the Andaman prison. There were films in Tamil also. I think everything can be imaginatively seen. And then with some, say for example, Gandhi, the film Gandhi, it is based on true life, but yet it has been so effectively written. And similarly, Dominic Lapierre and Larry Collins, they have written Freedom at Midnight. You read the book, you cannot put it down. After all, the book has been written so effectively. So is also the Last Mughal. They have made millions by writing Indian history and Indian historical accounts. What you require is some part of history that really attracts you, and you dig into it and connect the whole thing and come out with your creative writing. That is what is required. It is not question of suggesting certain, because I don't see things that way. That is what is more important. If I had this eye for choosing certain areas for writing novels, perhaps I may suggest. But I've been trained, maybe it is also, as I used in my own discourse, a kind of an epistemological barrier that I will not be able to see history as a novel, history as a creative writing. But there are several spaces within history where you can write creative writing. You can try yourself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Another question in YouTube. We were Mr. Hari Bhaskar. Sir, can you suggest any topics related to regional historiography?
Suggest any?
Recent historiography, regional historiography.
Oh, regional historiography. Maybe
any topics related to regional historiography?
I think I think the person must excuse me, because I was all the 3 years immersed in administration. I think that is taken away from the current discourse on historiography as well as the writings. This is not an excuse, I must say, but maybe I may be given some time. Offhand, I cannot tell you. If you are giving some time, maybe I'll be able to tell you that. I will pass the information to Saravanan. Saravanan can pass the information to the person who raised this question.
Another one question, Mr. Vizag.
Okay.
What is your opinion about certain intentional forces tampering regional or even national history based on institution and ideologies? How far the present historians are able to resist such instruction?
No, I told you even in the beginning, the Chinese emperor who tried to burn down all the books that were written before his time, which were placed in the public libraries in China, and that has become part of history. The act has become part of history. So you cannot stop history being written. The discourse of history will go on. Maybe always you have different shades of history, because history is a perspective. We must always understand. History is a perspective. History is not the idea of history. R.G. Collingwood is to say, you have something like nomothetic. Nomothetics, which means a scientific truth is nomothetic, universal in character. And there is an ideographic. Ideographic is again unique in character. And a discipline like history is unique in character. It is based on perspective, because E.H. Carr, in his book What is History, says that facts are like an empty sack. They don't have anything to tell us, because facts, they do not speak for themselves. It is the historian who makes the facts speak. So it is the role of the historian giving a perspective to history. So when they make an interpretation, say for some it is called right, for some it is called wrong. I would like to recall the words of M.M. Poston. M.M. Poston of the London School of Economics, professor. While writing an obituary to Karl Marx, he said, for half of the world, he is demigod, he is God. For other half of the world, he was Satan. This is exactly history.
The last question, sir.
Yes.
Sir, please just suggest some books that can be learned about the recreational and educational institution of the Dravidian period.
Recreation, of course, one book I have already mentioned, and that was everybody should read, to start reading the history of the Tamils from the earlier times to 600 by P.T. Srinivasa Iyengar. That was a pioneering work which identified the antiquity of the Tamils, I must say, and this has to be read first. And of course, you have people like K.K. Pillai, who has written on institutional history again. You have on the Pallavas, C. Meenakshi, who has done an excellent work. That was a doctoral thesis at the 1936 Madras University. Maybe the second lady to produce PhD at that time. And that was on the Pallava social life and the administration of the Pallavas. And there are other people who wrote on music. There are other aspects of that you will find, which I think if you approach people like Professor Subrahelu, Professor Shanmugam, Professor Rajan, I think you will get a better answer than. I think Sarunan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now
Yes,
at the end of the session, I call upon Dr. R. Siva, Assistant Professor, PG and Research Department of History, Pachaiyappa College, to deliver his vote of thanks. Welcome, Professor.
Good evening. Good evening to one and all. I am here before to all the proposal of vote of thanks. First of all, our sincere thanks to Pachaiyappa College Principal, Dr. R. Sirijayanti Madam, for giving us the permission to the jointly organize the 7 days a national level faculty development program from 1721 to 7721. Today's topic, understanding the national through the regional perspective. Our special thanks to the resource person, Professor N. Rajendran sir, formerly Vice-Chancellor, Alagappa University, Karaikudi, who took his time from his busy schedule to grace the event. Thank you for the inspiring and the encouraging us with your words on this special day. Thank you, sir. On behalf of our PG and Research Department of History, Pachaiyappa College, I thank our HOD, Dr. R. Saravanan sir, convener and organizing secretary, for the giving me this opportunity to propose vote of thanks. I also thanks our department staff member for this cooperation and valuable support in conducting this webinar successfully. Our sincere thanks that comes out from the bottom of the heart to large member of the participation present in this webinar. And also thanks Vetrivendan, Tamil Tamerika TV, Gandhi Lenin, Kavya Chelvan, and Dr. Kumaran sir. I would like thank to again for making this event a success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Hope the
Thank
session
you.
was useful and very informative. We will meet by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor. சிவா க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிடலாமா? இன்னும் யார் இருக்காங்களா? 25 பேர் இருக்காங்களே. ஓகே ஓகே. அந்த குரூப்ல போட்டிங்களாமா?
போட்டேன் சார்.
ஓகே ஓகே. நான் இன்னொரு மீட்டிங்ல இருக்கமா, அதனால அது ரெண்டையும் சாட் பாக்ஸ் பாத்துக்குமா கொஞ்சம்.
ஓகே சார்.
அந்த யூடியூப்ல எதுவும் அவங்களுக்கு வரலன்னு ஒரு அம்மா சொல்லிட்டே இருக்கு பாரு, அவங்க நம்பர் வாங்கி அவங்களுக்கு தனியா அனுப்புங்க.
குட் ஈவினிங்.
செஷன் எண்ட் பண்ணிடலாமா?
ஓகே சார்.
சார் எல்லாரும் வந்தாச்சு சார்.
ஓ ஓகே ஓகே.
இங்கிலீஷ் டிபார்ட்மென்ட் மட்டும் தான் வரல. மேடம்க்கு மெசேஜ் அனுப்பிச்சிட்டேன்.
அவங்க இன்னும் ரெப்ரசன்டேட்டிவ் கொடுத்துட்டாங்களா?
அவங்க இல்ல அது கொடுக்கல. இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் என்னென்ன அது என்ன மீட்டிங்ல நடந்ததுன்ற இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் மட்டும் பாஸ் பண்ண சொன்னாங்க. அவங்க வந்து டிபார்ட்மென்ட்ல யாருக்கு சொல்லிக்கிறாங்களா?
இது எண்ட் பண்ணல சார்.
இங்கிலீஷ் தவிர மீதி எல்லாம் இருக்கும் சார். எல்லாம் ஜாயின் பண்ணியாச்சு உள்ள.
ஓகே ஓகே ஓகே. இப்ப ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாமா நம்ம?
ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணுங்க சார். ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணுங்க.
ஓகே
சார் இத எண்ட் பண்ணிருங்க சார். சார்
எண்ட் பண்ணிட்டாமா?
ஓகே சார்.
ஓகே.